Hello, hello! These small pieces started as part of the March release, but I wanted to show you how I actually build them in layers. While using the new Finnabair papers, stencils, and pastes, and combining them with some of my usual elements to create rich layers and beautiful details. Let's go! For the first layer, I'm using soft matte gel to glue the decoupage fiber paper. I prefer a matte medium here because it keeps the surface completely flat, without any unwanted shine that could interfere with the background. On canvas, I like to apply a slightly more generous layer because of the texture, and then use a small scraper to spray it evenly. For the edges, you have a few options. You can trim the excess with scissors, fray it with sandpaper for a more organic look, or wrap it around the canvas like I'm doing here. I prefer wrapping it to keep everything neat and continuous. And once everything is in place, instead of sealing with gel, I'm using clear gesso to prime the surface. This next layer is all about creating variation for what comes next. I'm applying white gesso more heavily around the edges and then softening it towards the center with a sponge to keep it lighter and more translucent. This way, when I add pear paste layer, they react differently depending on the background, giving me more depth and contrast. For this layer, I'm working with the new Finnabair paste test. Each shade includes a translucent pear paste, which looks different depending on the background, and an unicorn paste for more intense shine. In this step, I'm focusing on the pear paste, using them together with the new stencils to build texture across the surface. Since these are small pieces, I'm applying the paste across the whole surface to give it more presence, instead of keeping it loose and organic like I usually do. I'm also choosing each stencil depending on the mood I want for each piece, but keeping the application consistent so the paste remains the main focus. The key here is to apply it evenly and keep the surface smooth so the shimmer can really stand out. Before starting the backgrounds, I had already planned the composition for each piece. That helped me decide where to place the main elements, which areas to highlight, and how much of the surface I want to keep visible. It also guides the mood of each canvas and the choices I made in the previous layers. Before I started painting, I glued the resin elements in place using heavy body gel to keep them secure. For the color, I'm working with liquid acrylics. For each piece, I'm choosing 1, 2, or up to 3 tones that complement both the background and the paste. Also, I make quick swatches to see how everything works together before applying the color. I start wetting the surface a little, and then I add small amounts of color and letting them blend with water to create soft transitions and different tonal variations. If I'm working with complementary colors, I keep them under control by drying in between to avoid moody colors, while I let the analogous tones free to blend more naturally. When my resin pieces are painted black, I apply some white gesso using a dry brush technique to bring out the textures and have the colors show through. I also fade the color as it moves away from the composition, especially towards the lighter areas, to keep the contrast soft and balanced. Then we must dry everything carefully. Once everything is completely dry, I go back with white gesso using a dry brush technique to bring out the texture and soften the colors. On darker piece, these steps helps reveal the detail while keeping the shadow underneath. Depending on the piece, I might repeat this process, building colors, softening it with gesso, and adding new tones in layers until I get the balance I'm looking for. To create contrast, I define some shadows in the deeper areas, especially in the gaps and corners, using a darker tone like in black, burnt sienna, or even black gesso. This adds more depth and dimension to the pieces. For the final touches, I'm adding pebbles in different sizes, place- placing them in the key areas of the composition. I'm using the matching unicorn paste underneath, both to glue them down and to enhance the shine. Once dry, you can appreciate all the sparkle that filters through the glass, but in a softer and more controlled way. I'm not a big fan of too much shine, so this is my way of keeping it more contained. And this is actually something I explore more deeply in a recent Patreon post. I also add small touches of the same paste in the darker areas to bring everything together. To finish each piece, I glue the focal elements using characters from the Steam and Floats Ephemera set and complete everything with a few white splatters. Well, here are the final pieces. Each one follows the same process, but a small change in color, texture, and composition create a completely different result. Working in layers like this allows me to control the outcome while still leaving space for variation. I hope this gives you some ideas to start experimenting and just play with the process. Thank you so much for watching. Bye bye!